for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
And my name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Customs let you back into the country, huh?
Hey, sure. Sure, and had all kinds of trouble. They were rubbing stuff on her arm like she had, gunpowder or something. 95 pounds. They let me through, and they got it churned. It was crazy.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, she made it.
Yeah, wow. Well, I'm glad to have you back here.
Thank you.
I know you've got a lot of stories to talk about, including what Europeans think of Donald Trump. We'll get to a little bit of that. We've got a lot to talk about. The Mueller hearings on Wednesday. There's so much stuff to get to. So before we get to that, a couple reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. And we would appreciate any help that you can give us there. We've got special audio up for you for patrons only. So again, patreon.com/Southpaws Radio for exclusive audio cuts that you won't hear anywhere else. You can listen to the show anytime you want. Go to Spreaker.com and do a search for Southpaws. You can go to the iTunes store, search for Southpaws under podcasts, and just look for our logo. You'll find us pretty easy. And, of course, you can listen to us on great Pacifica radio stations, including KCEI-FM, that is 90.1 FM, Taos, New Mexico, KZGM-FM in Kabul, Missouri, WHPW in Maine downloaded our show last week, and we appreciate that. And you can listen to us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on Global Community Radio Channel 1. We go on right after Democracy Now!, so make sure you check us out at Global Community Radio Channel 1. All right, well, I tell you what, Jack, before we get into the Mueller thing, you were telling me about a lot of Europeans, once they found out that you were American, they had pretty much the same question for you.
Yeah.
What's Donald Trump going to do next?
Exactly.
And not because they like Donald Trump, but because they're scared.
Listen, I could be in a conversation with Sharon, for example, and somebody would hear the English and maybe an American twang, I don't know, come right over and say, what's going to happen? I'd say, what? With Donald Trump? What do you think he's going to do? They're worried. They're scared. And as I said to you, they've seen a totalitarian government spring up out of the soil. They know what to look for.
They certainly have.
And, I went through a museum in Budapest. It's a world-famous museum. It's called the House of Terror. It sounds like some cheap kid's place, but this is a in-depth history of the occupation in Hungary, first by the Nazis and then the Soviet Union. And this isn't newspaper clippings. They take you right into a dungeon. They take you right into cells with blood still stained on the floor and show you a room that's got maybe 10 or 12 stanchions, like a post in the ground, where they would hang people.
Oh, wow.
All day long. They would take the Jewish people and drag them down and just throw them into the Danube River. And the other people they would burn or get rid of. But it was known around Budapest that you didn't want to go to 60 Embassy Street in the heart of Budapest. People didn't come out. And I'm looking at these totalitarian pictures, and when I left, and I'll give you this admission, USA, in case the FBI is looking for me, they had a sign-in book, and I said, hey, it's happening right now. Donald Trump is taking the same path. It's happening. I'm warning the world as an American. And I don't know how many people will look at it. But that's the only reaction I could have, looking at bulldozed bodies like they're bags of garbage at the landfill being pushed around first by the Nazis, but what they are in both cases, and don't tell me, well, I thought communists or socialists. No, the communists at the time of Lenin and the communists at the time of Stalin were authoritarians. You can have an authoritarian government, a totalitarian government. You can have a dictator on any banner. I say under any banner. You could be called progressive, free will, loving, caring, bleeding heart liberals and still end up with a totalitarian dictator. Now, Trotsky, or what's the guy, Trotsky, that supposedly was a guy who was a real socialist, a progressive socialist, and they murdered him. Mm-hmm. So forget the name, Democratic Socialist or whatever Hitler called himself. It's got the word socialist. It means nothing. Hell, we have democracy, right? That we're called a democracy. We're anything but. I repeat, we're anything but. So the moniker means nothing. A totalitarian government has some trademarks that are really rather quite easy to see that are happening right now today. A clampdown on the media. There were no free trials. There were no trials, period, in Hungary from 1944 to 1956. And the media couldn't say the wrong thing. They would be pulled down in the basement. There was no police to come and intervene. A totalitarian government is really what's unfolding right in front of our eyes. If anybody is intellectually honest enough to admit it, we are in the midst of it. And I am not surprised that Europeans came up and asked me. The first thing I said was, don't worry, I'm against Donald Trump myself. And we're worried. We're afraid. We have to have more reaction. As you have said to me over the last 24 hours, we need to do what the hell they did down in Puerto Rico.
Absolutely. Yes, Puerto Rico. Well, we have an update on what's happened in Puerto Rico for those of you that have missed it. After the governor of Puerto Rico said on Monday that he was stepping down as the head of his party but would not resign as governor, he changed his tune Wednesday and resigned as governor. So, people power works.
Yes, it
Strength
does.
in numbers.
Yeah.
Direct action works. Jeff Smith, our friend at GRIID.org. You need to check that website out for actual independent news. Spoke on it and spoke eloquently on it.
Said direct action works.
Yeah.
And people have to get over the idea that your savior is going to be some party politic or party ID politician. It ain't happening that way. The power in the people is greater than the people in power. And you've got to remember that axiom. Yeah. Smith is right. That's our answer for Trump. It's not waiting on Nancy Pelosi to stir and suddenly get grit in her teeth. It ain't going to happen that way, folks.
Yeah, it's the only answer is direct action. Elections aren't going to do it. They rig the elections. They kick people off the rolls. We've seen that before. But they did that in Georgia in 2018.
Yeah.
Documented.
And the Dems who said for months, you saw it, well, wait till Mueller's report comes out. Just wait until we get that report, because then we'll have the ammunition. We can start an impeachment. Well, there are some Dems who are calling for impeachment, but it's not because of Mueller. They put all their eggs in the basket of proving Russian collusion. Mueller came out, this is not verbatim, but in essence said word for word, there is no proof of collusion of any Trump operative or anybody in his cabinet or anybody working for Trump at all with Russia. Poof. There goes all your momentum. There goes all of your thrust to use against Trump. Now what are you left with, Dems? I got some ideas, Darren. Mm-hmm. How about asking why the hell the Dems went and gave Trump his military budget, voted for it? They wouldn't have won it without the Democratic vote. How about making an issue? How about backing up the 4 people that Trump calls a squad?
Yeah.
How about doing that, Dems?
Oh, but they can't do that because that would go against their corporate masters.
They're issues that they have raised, every single one of them. And the Green Deal is exactly the recipe for success. And the Dems won't touch it. But they'll put their eggs in a basket hoping that Mueller comes through, and all Mueller did was lay an egg. What a dud that whole thing was. I know you want to talk about that. The Dems hung their hat on that. Mm-hmm. Now it's too late for any other issues to be opened up.
Yep. Let me just read what Jeff Smith posted this morning. He says, and he linked this to an article at The Intercept. He says, let's make no mistake about it, the victory in Puerto Rico was due to mass protest and direct action to oust the governor. Many in the mass protest have been fighting against austerity measures and privatization for years, so it wasn't just the Twitter messages that pissed people off. The mass protests and direct action was possible because of the groundwork that organizers done in previous years, which created a critical mass at the right time. Direct action is so much more effective than giving up our power to bosses, governments, or the capitalist class. And he's right.
Yeah. And if you go down in the comments, somebody sent a suggestion in saying, and people can't see over their partisan party politics. That's who they think are going to save them.
And that someone is you.
and Jeff agreed. And that's they don't get it that you don't have to have a D on your chest to expect results. On the contrary, I was a Democrat all my life. My mother was a delegate. My mother was a hard supporter of Kennedy. So was I. I took on the debates in high school against Nixon debaters. I went to all of the Govern rallies. I stood for Jackson. I went through decades of seeing one buried progressive cause buried in the Democratic Party and the DNC. Not anymore. I won't give them another penny. I'll support progressives. I'll support the four and Bernie. I'll give them money directly. I won't give another dime, and neither will you. I know, because you're the one. You caught my attention. You said, I'm not giving another penny to the Democratic Party. I said, there's a guy with some balls.
After what happened in Arizona, you can go back into our archives in 2016. I got on air, and I said, I will never give, this is a direct quote, I will never give another goddamn penny to the Democratic Party. For that, the then chair of the 3rd Congressional District for the Democrats called my boss at the time and wanted me off the air. That's a true story. So, good morning, Tracy. I hope you're listening to this. Oh, thank God she's not in power anymore, although they didn't do much better.
You had the greatest progressive candidate run in Bernie Sanders in 2016, right?
They go from one bully to another over there at 3CD, my opinion.
Exactly. No, you know, Darren, that the progressive air that surrounded Bernie's campaign, we read on the show where now people said, well, he lost the primary. He didn't lose the primary. He was cheated. He was ripped off. But we were promised. But his issues we put into the planks and the platform. His impact was so great, there's going to be a wave of progressivism. Well, I'll tell you the wave is such that I have an article here, I think it's daily.
I'll tell you what the wave is. The wave is that the centrists are trying to drown the progressives.
Well, they reject it all.
And if they could do it literally, they would.
Yeah. They won't tolerate any of the progressive planks.
No, not at all.
The DNC went down here's another wave. People don't realize this. The DNC went down to Puerto Rico and talked to Republican delegates and said, if you will swing over and vote for Perez as a Democrat, which gave him the margin of victory over Ellison, who was the progressive. I'm not making this up.
Tom Perez, the chair of the DNC. Yeah. And speaking of Puerto Rico, this is the article that Jeff Smith had tied to. This is by Kate Aronoff, reporting for The Intercept. Now listen to this. Now, if you want to see what happens when those in power try to usurp it, here's the example. Again, this is Kate Aronoff reporting for The Intercept. Embattled Puerto Rico Governor Ricardo Rossello announced his resignation July 24th amid massive protests on the island and around the world. A demonstration in the capital city of San Juan on Monday drew an estimated 1 million people, almost a third of the island's total population, to protest a decades-long economic crisis that peaked in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. The unelected, now listen to this, here's what it gets down to. Now that Rossello's gone, listen to this. The unelected and Washington-appointed body now overseeing the island's finances, the Fiscal Oversight and Management Board, called La Junta by Puerto Ricans,